Sara. Now, Sara is the engagement and
training
person
Yep.
for ARNet. ARNet, one of our King Penguin sponsors for the conference, I think. No,
Yep.
Certainly sponsors
network.
the network. So yeah, and you're going to tell us about the circle of life of an open source project that does not involve code. Yeah. Sara, thank you. Take it away.
Thank you. Thank you so much for staying until the end. I hope that this will be of interest to you and keep you awake at least for the next 30 minutes or so. First, I acknowledge that we're meeting on the traditional country of the Kaurna people here in the Adelaide Plains where I work and live. I pay respects to elders past and present, and I recognise and respect their cultural heritage, beliefs and relationship with the land and the sea. I acknowledge that they are of continuing importance to the Kaurna people living today, and I extend that respect to other Aboriginal language groups and First Nations and all First Nations people here today. So as we said, my name is Sara. I'm the Training and Engagement Lead at ARNet, Australia's academic research network. And today I'm going to talk to you about a project I've been working with for about 5 years, and it's in the process of wrapping up. So it'll be a little mix of a few different things. I've put together a tiny link to a shared document that you can have a look at. One of the things that I know as I travel around is that you can meet all kinds of people in these conferences, and they have very many different backgrounds. There will be a few things that I'll reference in this talk that you may never have heard of. So I've put some links in there, a bit of jargon and so on, so that you can go off and explore if you want to know more. And it's also where you can pop in any comments or questions or anything. My email's in there, and just I thought it would be another way to engage with all of you. So this talk will be a part description of the project, part reflection, because we are in that sort of twilight or sunset time, and hopefully a little bit of interaction at the end if you can stay awake for some questions. I am here on behalf of a much larger team. I would also very much like to acknowledge the work, passion, expertise and camaraderie of all the people who have contributed to this project I'm about to talk about, which is about 20 people or so. They're all listed as contributors in the GitHub repository that I've shared on that document. But first I'm going to take you back to the heady times of late 2019. Remember then? Where were you? What cheap holidays had you planned? What were you looking forward to? Did you think about how much you spent at the supermarket every day? Had you ever paid $7.50 for a coffee? Remember the OK Boomer meme and how that might have given you the shivers? Or cleaning out gleefully after watching Marie Kondo's joy of tidying up? Remember then? Were you surprised about how many people started wearing Crocs like they were fashion items? I was. There were tough times too in this period. We remember really strongly those bushfires, again coming up recently in LA as well. Notre Dame was burning, and we didn't know, but a pandemic was looming. So it was in that time that the idea for what became the project I'm going to talk about came into being. I was travelling a lot. I was working in person all the time with lots of people around Australia, and it felt like something fun to bring some like-minded people together to learn some new skills, make something that would be useful to people, and get it all over and done with in a few months or whatever. I'd heard about book sprints for a while, and I thought that would be a cool experience. And I'd started this new job, and it's my first in this sector. Everything was super exciting. I got to present at the Linux conference in the Gold Coast, feeling completely out of my element. Excuse me, but it turned out to be a lovely surprise, and I'm really happy to be back in this very welcoming group of people, and I'm blown away by all the talks that I've been to so far. I've been really nervous because I think everyone's been so wonderful. Anyway, it was a very energetic and creative time in that little moment of 2019, and a lot of people, I felt, were in that same kind of vibe, and it felt kind of like anything was possible. So we switch now to 5 years later, and it feels like a lot longer. I don't know about you, but that span of time, my hair literally went grey. So this is the project this is when a project that I'm talking about is coming to a natural end of a cycle that seems probably really long. But we're really keen also to hear from others about what that end could look like. We're kind of still in the middle of it, and whether indeed there is any hope for a new beginning that might come out of it. And that's why we sort of refer to this cycle. We'll see. So in the talk, it'll have the following shape. Like a traditional life cycle diagram, we'll be going from germination and creation through to growth and maturation, some decline and decay, a bit of decomposition, we'll call that a moment of reflection, and then some nutrients thrown in there. Where to now? What did we miss? And what could we be looking at in terms of a return to the start? What could come next? Is there any semination, new growth, cross-fertilisation that could occur? Perhaps the most important thing for those of you who might just go to sleep now is the concept of nutrients in this cycle, because I think that's something that rookie gardeners, and I'm going to be extending this plant and gardening metaphor a lot, forgive me, but I feel like that's something that a lot of people might get wrong, is not preparing for good soil before you think about all the plants or the shape of the garden and so on. And I think that might be where we missed out on a few key things. Anyway, we'll see how we go. This is the story of an open source community project around building an online resource for the academic community using GitHub and GitBook. So the context, we were in a very fertile period, like I said. In early 2019, the Council of Australian University Libraries, called CAUL, launched a Digital Dexterity Champions Network, and it was a community of practice that called on university librarians across Australia and New Zealand to nominate digital dexterity champions from their institutions. And one of the main aims of this community was to promote the new CAUL Digital Dexterity Framework by developing skills and sharing resources to build digital capacity among the library workforce. And it was a group of about 60 people at the beginning who had either volunteered for that role out of personal interest and drive, or were voluntold by their managers. So that always has a little bit of a interesting development, I suppose, depending on why people are there in the first place. Our community was a large, enthusiastic, engaged group of library staff and e-research professionals, of which I'm one, and it was a perfect environment. Like I said, it was quite a fertile environment for an idea such as this Digital Skills GitBook to take root and grow. So going back to the seed, if you like, a tweet. Remember Twitter? Yeah. At the end of 2019, this tweet was tweeted at me, and it inspired a discussion at an early community of practice meeting about the need for a common solution to a common basic technical problems faced by everyone who needs to navigate an evolving academic life. So a lot of people turn up at universities, they get given a laptop, and away you go, and they don't really have necessarily a lot of basic skills. Most people end up at a library asking about those skills. Librarians, in turn, may or may not have those skills. Where do you go to learn them? This was the question. Is there a book that teaches modern, not quite technical computer skills? And there was a basic outline. And someone texted this to me, and for whatever reason, that idea just wouldn't leave me alone. And I figured that maybe there was some way of figuring out how to do it. So with that group of librarians, we identified that publishing an open online guide would provide an opportunity for those champions to gain experience with open educational resource production and development, publication, maintenance, and it also filled the gap for this up-to-date professional learning related to those not quite technical skills for library staff and the communities that they worked with. It also joins up with some of the issues that I had in my job, which was teaching and uplifting people's technical skills in that arena, and needing to do it myself, not knowing where to find it. Often you Google stuff and it's people trying to sell you or some kind of product. There's Wikipedia, of course, which was a great inspiration to us, but most of the time Wikipedia goes way too deep, way too quick in terms of technical stuff. There's a lot of beginner stuff for children. I was trying to train people who are highly intelligent, well-trained, working in universities, basic technical skills, and there is a bit of a gap for that. Anyway, so the concept was that we would work together on a proposal, a chapter outline, gather in a place over a few days and create this book. Travel budgets existed then, but in no time, COVID restrictions came, put a quick end to that, and we all got busy working online from home and going through all of what that early pandemic era was like. Eventually, though, we pivoted like it was 2020, and I'm really proud of us for getting to that point. So why GitBook? All of us, really only very little experience with any of the technologies we're about to use. I think the fact that book is in the term GitBook made it appealing and understandable to a library audience, the kind of people that we were thinking of. And I had recently come across the Carpentries. There's a link in the little document there. It's a group globally that teaches foundational code and data science to researchers worldwide. All of their curriculum is in GitHub, and it is maintained and used by a very large population of people, and they can all work on it at the same time. And I was really impressed with that as a concept, and I thought, well, why not apply that to what we're doing? No one's actually going to publish a book of these skills, because we know after 10 minutes they've changed, everything moves so fast, you can't do this on paper anymore. And the idea of the version control was extremely appealing to librarians. The fact that we could keep the things that we'd been doing, even though they might not have been visible anymore. So there were a few things that appealed to us, being able to suggest additions, make changes over time, version control, and we also, being in that open science movement phase and in that arena in the academic field, the advent of open educational resources being a big thing in libraries as well, we wanted that platform to be open source. And right at that point, CAUL had not yet, that's the Council of Australian University Libraries, had not yet launched their own open educational resource publishing platform, which they eventually did. And I think that may have had an impact on our project too. We can kind of discuss that later. They eventually went with Pressbooks and had a kind of global subscription or whatever to that platform. But we were in a gap there, and so we went with GitBook. Also, having the support of ARNet, which is a not-for-profit company, we were able to register the GitBook for free. So GitBook will allow you to use that platform if you're a not-for-profit and whatever you're doing is open source. Universities don't qualify for that. Potentially a group within a university could apply, but generally none of the people that I was working with at the time would have had that. So it was ARNet's ability to get that freeness, right, that was helpful as well. So we chose the GitBook for that. It wasn't going to cost us anything because we had no money. We were not budgeted. We did want to learn something from scratch. That was part of it. So we did want to get into GitHub and Git and all of those things. And the built-in collaboration features were going to be really the most important thing, because we were all dispersed, right? We couldn't get into a room together. It was also important that it wasn't dependent on that platform. Everything in the GitBook is made in Markdown, so you can use that in any number of different places. So theoretically, anyone could export that content and put it somewhere else, and that was all the idea. So I've marked a little fork in the road here just for you all to reflect on. Was this a technical step too far in kind of getting into this GitBook kind of concept with people who had no experience in this at all and no other reason to use it or learn it? So I'll leave that with you as a question. There are many more questions that I've got, like, did the community even need this book? Did we ask anyone? There are a few good questions, but we thought so, and we didn't really know because we didn't broadly ask, but it didn't matter at the time because we had this very big support of the CAUL Digital Dexterity Champions Network. We said it was enough, and that was enough. A stranger asked us, a friend recommended something, a few tech-curious librarians went, yeah, so we went for it, okay? So there wasn't a lot of risk, I guess, is what I'm saying. I do want to underline the timing, right? This is exquisite timing in a sense, historically. It was developed initially purely during those pandemic lockdowns with travel restrictions going for the first 2.5 years. None of us had actually met each other in person except for, I think, a handful right at the beginning of 2020. We were lucky enough to have a small event, but we weren't working on that project at that time. We were mostly working from home. Normal routines were completely disrupted. Opportunities for in-person collaboration were nixed. And it was a blessing and a curse. We were all online. We became each other's personal engagement at work. We became an extremely supportive group in a difficult time. We believed in psychosocial safety in our very nature. And so we were able to put together the kind of building blocks of a community, I think in a really specific way that was attuned to the times. Whether we would have worked differently had we had opportunities to catch up, whether the thing would have turned in a different direction because of that, we won't know, right? So just be aware that we were working in this sort of context for a long time. So let's hit summer. Growth, maturation. This process came in a few phases. Obviously a plan we had. Then we went to production. We wanted to do promotion. There was some process maintenance type stuff, and then there was puzzled. So lots of P words. But the first practical thing we did after the documentation stage of a plan and a few different things that CAUL wanted from us, we organised some training so we could actually understand what Git was. Why is it called Git? What is a GitHub? What is a GitBook? We're very grateful to the team at the ARDC with the Australian Research Data Commons who did some training for us. And what they did is use a small part of the Carpentries library carpentry Git module, which is linked in that document there, which is a really basic beginner's intro to Git. And we did that training, and we spent basically every meeting, we met every fortnight reminding each other of how this thing worked and the tractor module and all these different things to try and get it to stick in our minds, keeping in mind that none of us had used it before and we don't code. What we did from then though is we created a test book, and we wanted to separate the technical from the content, so we just made a cookbook and we put pictures of food in there and we typed up recipes and we created a book using this book interface with stuff that we weren't invested in, and that was a very neat way, I think, of doing it. We had a lot of mental overload at that point too, with everyone's job changing at the same time. So it's pretty easy to overload, I think, at that point. I was teaching people who'd never used Zoom at that point. Can you imagine someone who'd never used Zoom? We were in that phase. So it was a gentle way to introduce ourselves to the tech. And I really recommend that if you're working with anyone who doesn't use technology, do the tech bit, do the content bit, join them together afterwards, but not all at once. And I think that really helped us because it was also not a public-facing thing. We kept that just in our group. People couldn't really go and see the ridiculousness that was going on in the background and how bad we were all at it. Because one thing you need to know about librarians generally, there's a very big generalisation, and I might point specifically to an academic librarian cohort, is that they like things to be done very well. They are perfectionist types. Not looking like you know what you're doing is very risky in that environment. So one of the things that we had to do was give each other permission to not know what we were doing and remind each other of that constantly. It was a great big anxiety that everyone had. And I feel like that's probably the best thing that we did in this project, was create that safety of being able to not know what you were doing. And again, I think that is a little bit also broadening out to the whole pandemic thing, that none of us knew what was going on. So one of the really lovely things that I'm really proud of as well is that we didn't know how it was going to look, and someone had a stroke of genius, and they took the framework that we were working under, the Digital Dexterity framework, and they transformed that into the chapter outline. And as soon as we saw it, it was immediately obvious. Initially, we were attached to that tweet, but then we were able to translate the document that we were working from into the chapters, and it made total sense. And that was really good. And I think key to that is that the people who came along for the ride were all quite differently skilled. And that wasn't done because there was any kind of recruitment or anything like that. They were just people who were naturally interested in what we were doing and they volunteered. And then people were able to kind of play to their strengths, which was a real luxury. I don't think we always have that in every group that we work with, but we were able to, just say, oh, you feel like doing that? You're going to be good at that? Go for it. And don't worry about something else that you're not going to feel comfortable with. So that was a really helpful thing. And what we did beyond that was we liked the idea of trying to make the chapters of the book have a kind of beginner, intermediate and advanced options, so that if you were someone like me who just wanted to know what that word means, why is Git called Git, you would have a sentence or two and that would be it. If you needed a little bit more, you could go on, and if you really wanted to be an expert, you could get that in. We also knew that was going to be an issue with the contributors we were hoping to attract, because we wanted people who even didn't have a lot of that technical knowledge could still contribute that upper layer for a novice. And actually that's quite hard to make something complicated very simple. A lot of you would know that. So having something for a novice about something complicated is not as easy as it looks. So we landed on novice, proficient, advanced. It didn't always work for every topic, but didn't seem to matter. This is what the book looks like now. It went public, I think in late 2021 or somewhere around there, or maybe even 2020, can't remember. It's all a blur. But what we did, it's a bit hard for you to read on the left there, but what we really cared about was this safe community and space, and that came out of the Carpentries. They do that very well. We set off to make a code of conduct as one of the first things we did. We used the Carpentries one, we did look at the Linux community one, and then we wrote our own, and that was a small group who went off and did that. We also had a group who were interested in copyright and had access to copyright experts, which was great in the libraries. So they went off and chose a license that we would use. We chose a CC BY share alike. And we felt that would be helpful for any people that we wanted to invite to author for us, because that was a decision we'd made already. They didn't have to worry about licensing or anything. We put together contribution guidelines, and that was kind of complex because we were still learning how to do it, but actually having beginners teach beginners can be a very helpful process. So actually the way that we communicate how to use GitHub may be very different to how anyone who is in a coding community would teach someone how to do it. So we did it for library folk. We also did a little YouTube video so that people could follow along, because we knew at that point lots of people were learning that way. And we fiddled about with some bots and stuff, and we just generally kind of set out to build the structure for this book, this content. We have a style guide. Markdown was new to everybody, but we figured that was not a massive barrier. We managed to get through that pretty quickly. But again, that's maybe a fork in the road. Was it a barrier? Probably, possibly. These are things that we can reflect on as we go. But yeah, you'll see down the left, if you go into it, the link is on that document as well. The chapters are the digital dexterity framework ideas, and then within that we've got suggested content that people could then go along and claim. If you had someone who was working on something and they were excited about it, they could come and claim a chapter, write on it and publish it. That was all, pretty hopeful, and things changed over time. We hit that promotion stage, so we set up the whole kind of foundation of it so that we could show people and say, hey, we made a thing, we need you to be part of it, because it would have been a little hard to talk about if it didn't exist, right? It wasn't maybe our strength. We did do a comms plan. It's pretty funny to look at now. We were very ambitious about it, but we used every channel we had available to us. Newsletters, mailing lists, we had our own blog in that group, social media, internal institutional channels, we ran webinars, we did internal info sessions with all the universities we could, we developed some collateral like a slide deck, we made this infographic that was also, I think at some point, a bookmark. When we could, and things opened up again in 2022, we went out on the conference circuit. Some of you probably heard me talk about this before. I've been doing it for a while. And we got so much excitement any time we talked about it, people loved the idea. They loved the idea of, you know, librarians making a technical thing that could be updated over time because things change so quickly. We loved that it was accessible for anybody. We were working across Australia and New Zealand, and it was big. Like that year, I think we did 9 presentations, and we were running Shut Up and Write sessions as well. So we were inviting people to come. We were doing them via Zoom. Shut Up and Write is just basically we'd give you some basic instructions, turn off your camera and your mic and write for 25 minutes, come back, have a chat, do it again, and then talk about it afterwards, because we wanted to create a space, put a little note in someone's calendar, not rely just on random volunteer time, because that's not really a thing. And they were okay. We had to change them a little bit because we had new people come and they didn't understand what was going on. So we would have a breakout room for an intro session while other people were writing. We got into that sort of process and we were kind of expecting things to keep growing and stuff to gather momentum and stuff. We had, you know, thought about our review process, editing, maintenance. I've got a document somewhere where I'm like, there will be a group of maintainers recruited and they will work on all these things. And in our minds, there were going to be one in every university and everything. That didn't happen. And maintenance never really ended up being a thing because we didn't get the kind of contributions that we were expecting. We did get some. But yeah, it's sort of timing again, right? By the time we were at that point, people were back at work. The university system was adjusting, and I'll go into that in a little minute. This is also the phase where we were puzzled, okay? So we had problems we didn't know how to resolve and we didn't really know how to ask, and we were running out of steam. We didn't know how to combat author acknowledgement that in the university system you really need to probably do because people are motivated by stuff like that. What were those motivations? Why would a contributor come and do this? How do we keep spreading the word? These call to action are getting a lot of enthusiasm but not any action. So we enter our autumn decay decline kind of phase where this is 2023. We've put a lot out, there's not a lot coming back in. It's face to face to face to face. Restructures are rama. University libraries are shedding and shedding and shedding, and it's just getting to the point where there's not even enough staff to do the stuff to keep the library open. So people couldn't keep doing what they were doing in our group, and we lost a lot of people from our team, and we didn't get any more. Budgets were shrunk, people were very tired. Do you remember the Great Resignation of 2021? Pandemic fatigue, burnout, 2022, quiet quitting, quiet vacationing, noisy quitting, endless restructures, and we were definitely not separate for that. We were actually really right in the depths of it, and it was showing, and people were cracking, and it was too much. And because people cared and they loved it and they loved the group, it was even harder for them to leave. So we had to kind of really counsel each other on how to exit gracefully without feeling terrible and that you're leaving people behind or whatever. Also, I will put a note that social media at some point became so foul and so hot and inflamed. It was like medieval town squares out there, people getting lynched and hung, and that people didn't want to engage, especially in our spaces. Twitter just had a complete meltdown, has never recovered. LinkedIn at the time, full of corporate types giving thanks and stuff, and it just wasn't our thing. I wonder if there is a kernel of hope in some of the new ones that people are going to. I know Blue Skies had a great migration. Who knows? Whether that's something for the future, I'm not sure. So we did develop a poster late last year, which was kind of a map of everything that we'd done, where we'd got to. That's in our GitHub as well. This is Suk, who a fabulous volunteer in our group, who's a librarian in Western Australia. We've got achievements up there, which I'd like to highlight, which is we did introduce an unconventional audience to GitHub. And some of our team did go on and get new jobs in more technical roles, and part of that is because they had this as evidence of working on something technical. So that was fabulous. It set up across this institutional international network of librarians to collaborate on a project. We still collaborate and we do other things, and we're a very strong group of connected professionals. in a moment where maybe there isn't a lot of other connection going on. Some of our roadblocks, we do admit that learning the Git bit was difficult, and that is a barrier. Oh, did I do something? Sorry. And we kind of got to the point where people just didn't have the time anymore. And I guess any of you who've worked on any of this would know that time is hard to manage when work is increasing and blah, blah, blah. And then in the end, people left, which they had to get a new job, restructures, leave the whatever, but we just didn't get any new ones. So we were on the bones of our bum in the end. I think there's 4 of us left. So we did ask at that presentation, what do you reckon? What do we do now? Do we just wrap it up with a bow and say, thank you very much, it was great? Or do we use this energy and try and put it into something else? We got 4 answers at this conference, and they're all really different. So one's like partner with others in the OER space. So there's this Pressbooks thing that's going on now for a while. Could it go into something like that? Are there other spaces? GitHub may or may not be a good choice to continue with. There you go. Somebody talking about Microsoft being shameless, and you know, there's a lot more awareness about all of that stuff now. One person, hopelessly optimistic, hopefully you've garnered new enthusiastic contributors from the workshop. So we did a GitHub workshop at that conference. And someone else was like, well, why don't you give it to students? I bet this was an academic. Of course, give all the work to the students because they'll do it for free. And give them a publication and blah, blah, blah. So it's sort of interesting, different perspectives. I know that most of us don't really have the energy to do too much. So here we are, 2025, reflecting what happened. It was a process and it was a product. And I think if we can separate those two things right out, we can have a bit of a good reflection. We had loads of enthusiasm, like I said, our own, anyone we talked about it, people loved it. That was so encouraging, but I reckon we misinterpreted that enthusiasm. We enjoyed it, and that was good, but it felt like, I think what we thought is that people were going to take it up, right? That enthusiasm would equate to action. I think what it came from was people who were enthusiastic about it were people who were never going to use it. They weren't the audience. They just thought it was an awesome idea. Good one. Off you go. And we didn't really understand that they were excited about that process, but not the end product or anything there. We didn't get a lot of hits on this book. The content is great. It wasn't shared broadly, even that. People just share it. Go and put it on your Twitter. No. Add it to people's lists of references. You know, you work on a front desk in a library, put that on there. Nah. So what was it about this process? Was it adopting the new technology? A lot of us get excited about that. Was it the fact that we were creating a community? Maybe. We wanted to make this guide for a group of people, but we didn't really talk to them about it very much. And that is probably a thing I would do differently. More consultation at the time maybe would have told us that other people have other goals and they don't want to go and do that and they want something else. So even on a hunch, it was still worth pursuing, but maybe have a different idea about where you're going. The thing, though, that was one of our goals was to train people to create OERs, and we did that because where else was anyone going to learn? Who else was going to teach these guys? How were we going to figure this out? So it was definitely worth doing for that. And so for that, I feel like it was a success. Our group learned a ton, and we shared what we knew, and we did that with grace and enthusiasm, and some got new, more interesting jobs, which was really important at that time. Every one of us gained more confidence, and that's something too I notice in the academic library arena when it comes to tech. There's high levels of curiosity, but very, very low levels of confidence. We raised that. We learnt about safe spaces and learning and how everyone needs that, and now they can model that in their teams and their groups. And some of them did their first conference papers. They got up and talked about this stuff, which they would not have had a reason to do, or the support of an entire group behind them to do. So for that, it was absolutely gold as an experience. So going back to this idea of nutrients, right, of the gardeners, we were there gardening, doing our things. Did we know how to prepare our soil? Maybe not. Did we apply all of the fertilizer we needed to? I don't know. I don't think so. There is in that list of things that I put on that document a garden analogy that later I did some training with a community called Centre for Scientific Collaboration and Community Engagement. I wish I'd done this before this project, but anyway, I know now. And they have a whole paper about the gardening analogy and working with communities, and that whole thing of having your different areas. And there's going to be people who are going to just love wildflowers, and they're just going to hang out over there, and there are going to be other people that want everything lined up, and they want everything perfect and beautiful. You're going to have your veggie patch. It's going to take a lot of resources. Things change during the year. People come and go. It's a lot, right? And I think if we'd had more of an idea about some of those things, we could have potentially done things differently that would have garnered more energy and more contributions. Could money have helped? Absolutely, but money wouldn't fix everything, so I'm not sure that that would have been an answer. We did need the support of CAUL, that overarching body, because that allowed these people in the team and me to use up our work time to do this. Without their support, workplaces wouldn't let people just work on a random pirate kind of project like this one. That community has now been set to pasture, sunsetted by CAUL, so it doesn't exist anymore, so the project really has no umbrella. So that's going to make it really difficult for us to continue. It, I think, needs its own group of champions and a set of community leaders in many jurisdictions, I think, and institutions to support it. You know, in my mind, it would be amazing if we had a representative in every university who really cared about this project, because I think it could really have wings if it did. But also, can you solve a general problem with a general solution? It's a question that comes back to me all the time. I don't know. I think that's probably very ambitious and a little bit crazy. But anyway, we gave it a go. So, do we plant new seeds? I don't know. It seemed that there were more people interested in the process than the project itself, rather than what we were actually building. So we were wondering, do we run more sessions on how to do a similar thing to meet a group's needs? Do we grab a bunch of people and say, hey, we did a community thing, this is how we did it, these are things we learned. So we've written a GitBook transformation plan that's all in draft at the moment, and we're working on that so we can wrap up the project and keep it alive as long as Arnett will have it on the GitHub. And we have a document coming called Creating a Community GitBook that's going to have some of that sort of technical stuff in it. And just leave it out there so that if anyone comes across it, they've got a bit of a roadmap for how to do it if they want to. Could we hand it over to a new group? Anyone want it? You could fork it, you can have it. Let me know if you're interested. Unlikely, possible, we could keep going, but I think we'd need that new supporting structure. We'd probably need some kind of money behind it. I don't know where that would come from or how that would work. But I look at the communities that we were aspiring to, like the Carpentries and the Turing way, and they do get funding and they do have a core staff. In any case, it has been a very awesome experience. We created community, we made friends, we learned a lot, we did something useful in a really wildly crazy period in time, and we took care of each other, and I'm very grateful to everyone who took part, the core team, the contributors, all the supporters, people like you who come and listen to me blather on about it. I'd definitely do it again, bringing all that sort of I wish I knew then what I know now energy, especially around community management and community engagement. But yeah, that's my story. I hope you enjoyed it and can take some little seeds and grow something yourself. Very happy for questions and comments and chats at dinner.
Kia ora, and thank you very much for that talk. This is more of a hope punk type comment.
Totally, yeah, I felt that.
I was in Dublin in July last year at Dublin City University, and they're restructuring their degree programs so that whatever degree you're doing has a common set of skills. that you have to study and reflect on and demonstrate capability in, much of which you've talked about today. So your gem, your seeds are still growing, and they've restructured 15-degree programs so far, and they've got about 15 million euros to carry on that work.
Oh man, I should look for a job in Dublin. That's great. And I saw the Hope Punk talk before, and I thought, wow, I had never heard of that before. And I thought, is that what we were doing? We weren't angry about anything, and we weren't politically engaged in that sense, but there's definitely a lot of hope and a little bit of that kind of, oh yeah, you've created this thing for coding, but we can use it in our own way. And I liked that little bit of subversion about what we were doing as well. But that skills thing is a massive issue at universities. People just get chucked in, they're expected to use all this tech, know how to do streaming and whatever, and I don't know, people aren't born with those skills, and they're not really available anywhere for free in a way that makes sense to intelligent grown adults. So hopefully they'll come up with some good resources, yeah.
Okay, thanks very much, Sara.
I'm released.
Lots of fun. Thanks for giving the talk, and thanks for your
you.
contributions to the open source community. So.
All right, well, look at it and tell me what you think.
Yeah.
Thanks everyone, enjoy your dinner.